Champions Cup kicks off this weekend. It's going to be interesting to see who are the teams that are going to shine this year. My name is Mark. Let's talk rugby. This year's Champions Cup has kind of snuck up on us a little bit. You know, we had a very intense November international window, and it kind of put a lot of like domestic rugby club, province, whatever, regional rugby kind of to the side a lot. But now we're into this, and you know, if teams haven't been focused on this properly, they could come a cropper this weekend, and we might see a few shocks. But what we're going to do in this video is we're going to go through each of the pools for this year, and then we'll go through the fixtures for this weekend as well in the Champions Cup. And then I'm recording this on Wednesday. It's probably going to go up the channel though on Thursday morning. And later on Thursday, I'll do the same for the Challenge Cup. This is going to be shorter than the normal ones I do for Champions Cup. Like normally Champions Cup preview, especially with the pools and stuff, would be an hour. I'm hoping to keep around about 15 minutes for this, but we'll see how we do. Okay, so I'm going to go through our pools. So pool 1, we have Stade Toulousain. So, you know, basically the kings of Europe in there. They're with ASM, Clermont, Auvergne. You got Hollywoodbets Sharks, Saracens, Glasgow Warriors, and Sale Sharks in there. So, you know, it's a really tough group for me because, again, you got the kings of Europe. You got Clermont, who, you know, for me, they're the team that put the most into Europe, that have gotten the least out of it, but they always take the Champions Cup seriously. You know, they don't always qualify, but they're not one of these French teams that will send like the second team to away games and stuff. So they're going to be fighting tooth and nail all the way through. You got the Sharks, who, you know, haven't shown what they're capable of in this competition, and I'd love to see them really start to produce performances on this stage, because the quality they have in their squad, like, it feels like, you know, themselves and the Champions Cup are a marriage made in heaven, but we haven't really seen, you know, anything like a wedding happening between those two at the moment. Saracens, obviously former champions, went down a little bit in recent years, but seem to be, you know, finding a way back. Glasgow Warriors, you know, they've been doing well in this competition. They just need to maybe go that step further here. Like, obviously they've lifted their URC crown now, so they've proved that they can win silverware. And, you know, again, another team who would fancy themselves, I think, to go through to the knockout stages. And then you got Sale Sharks in there, you know, who they're kind of one of these teams that they can definitely beat anyone on their day, but they have off days as well. So they're going to be thereabouts, I think, and maybe a bit of a litmus test in terms of, you know, whether you're going to qualify or not will be, you know, at least for the non-English teams, can you win that game against Sale? But looking at the pool, you would say two teams that you would probably think would definitely go through are Toulouse and Saracens. I'd imagine Glasgow should be there as well, given how well they've done the competition in recent years. And then it's between the other three for the final place. But, you know, that can very quickly change in these pools as well. After a couple of games, you know, we may be seeing a very different story. Onto Pool B then. It's got Bath Rugby, you know, English champions, you know, kind of a grand old name in rugby and in European rugby as well, but a team that hasn't been lifting trophies in a long time. So, you know, the fact that they've done that now will give them confidence coming in here and feeling like, you know, that they can, you know, acquit themselves maybe a little bit better than they have in recent years in this competition. Then we've got Toulon and wearing their jersey, you know, a very tough team as well. would probably fancy themselves to go through. Munster Rugby, Munster, brilliant start to the season, had the first defeat of the season there last week against the Stormers, but still, they're a team that really live for this competition, and you would expect them fighting tooth and nail all the way through to try and qualify. Castres Olympique, I think they are one of those French teams that if things aren't going their way can kind of lose interest halfway through the pool stages. So there might be if things aren't going their way, at least an easy win for somebody in their home game or wherever, or even a surprising away win that they maybe weren't expecting, depending on how seriously Castres are taking it at the time. Then you got Edinburgh. Great to see two Scottish teams in the Champions Cup this year. It's been a long time. It's been swapping between Glasgow and Edinburgh, over the last kind of 5 years or so. So to have the both of them in there is brilliant. But you feel like Edinburgh, they've got to find some consistency if they're going to get out of this pool. And then Gloucester there, can play some great rugby, can cause a few upsets, but, results kind of have to go their way. And when you're looking at it, you probably think, again, in this one, probably Bath, Toulon and Munster would be the three that you'd pick to go through, and then one of the other three. But again, it's Champions Cup, and, anyone can finish last in the pool. Onto Pool 3 then. So we have a lot of kind of familiar names thrown together. So you got Leinster and Leicester, who always, have seem to have been meeting this competition in recent years. You got Harlequins in there as well. Stade, Rochelais, always again pairing up with Leinster. You got Bayonnais and DHL Stormers. And, this is a pool where you think like Leinster, not great form so far this season. Same with La Rochelle as well. Have them in great form, and therefore you look at this pool and you think there definitely could be a few shocks in this one. And you've got the Stormers there, top of the URC, unbeaten all year, just pulled off an amazing win at Munster as well, coming back from 21-6 at half-time. And again, want to see the South African teams performing in this competition and taking it completely seriously all the way through, because you look at some of the South African teams, you think they should be making semi-finals and potentially finals as well. That's the quality that they have. But because of the rules and the fact that they can't have home quarterfinals, etc., we generally don't see that. We see them kind of, switching focus to the URC around that time. But if a South African team can do it, it's the Stormers, and definitely can do it away from home in knockout stages. But looking at this again, you would think Stormers, if they can produce that performance, they're going through. And then Leinster, can they pick up, between Leinster and La Rochelle, can they pick up their form and produce in Europe? If they can, maybe those two are going through, and then maybe Leicester along with them. Or, I think this one is wide open. The others, I could name three teams I think are definitely going through. This one, I think, it's a bit harder. I think there's going to be probably 4 teams scrambling for the last 2 places rather than 3 teams squabbling over one. In this pool, I think it's going to be much tighter than the others, at least the way it looks at the outset. Now, if some of the big names are in there, your Leinsters, your Leicesters, and your La Rochelles really hit their European form, then it could be 1 from 3 from the others. But again, Stormers have been so good. At the moment, I think their target should be to win this pool, because they've been so good so far this season. Can they do that or not is a question though. But yeah, I think very competitive in Pool 3. Then on to Pool 4, we got defending champions Bordeaux Begles, Scarlets, rock bottom of the URC. You got Bristol Bears, you got POW, and Northampton Saints, who've done so well in this competition in recent years, semi-finalists last year, and then Vodacom Bulls, another massive South African team who haven't quite delivered in this competition, but I think, you know, they've maybe become the closest of the South African teams in terms of progressing through the competition. So it's going to be interesting to see again where their focus is on this. If really do believe, like, if the likes of the Bulls take this competition completely seriously, then they're an absolute threat to, you know, get into semi-finals, get into finals, and begin to a final. Then you've obviously got a chance of winning the trophy, but we haven't really seen that commitment from any of them yet. Hopefully this year is the year we see it. But yeah, looking at this pool, you got to think defending champions Bordeaux, they've been, I think, in the last two iterations of this competition, they're the best team in the pool stages. So you'd expect them probably to top this pool. Then Scarlets, you know, they're, you know, a little bit in, I'm not going to say in trouble, but the fact that they are rock bottom of the URC, maybe they could possibly be the whipping boys of the group. They don't want that. You know, myself as a URC fan, I want all the URC teams to do well. I do not want to see that happening to them. So the fact that they got their first win of the season, you know, there at the weekend, impressed 23-0 against Glasgow, at least gives you some hope that, you know, they can produce performances. That's the thing about the Scarlets team, is they can produce some brilliant rugby, but it's a case of, you know, can you produce that rugby and make it winning rugby as well? And can you do that consistently enough to get through the pool stages and finish in the top four in your pool? It's a tough ask for them, but if they hit a run, you know, a vein of form, maybe they can. Then looking at the others, you would expect, you know, Northampton Saints should be getting through this pool, and probably the Bulls as well. So again, you know, depending on whether Scarlets can perform or not, it's maybe going to be a three-way fight for one spot between themselves, Bristol Bears and POW. Or if Scarlets just aren't turning up and can't, you know, reach that level, then maybe it's a straight shootout between those two. But again, results can go anyway, and teams who you think are going to be, you know, safely through could be struggling in the final round, needing to go away and win, and maybe win with a bonus point, or, you know, have results go their way elsewhere to qualify. That's the beauty of this competition. But yeah, you know, 4 really strong pools there. But again, you have just those behemoths of European rugby who will be looking to dominate the pools, and other teams looking to emerge from the pack and show themselves as, you know, a force to be reckoned with. And that's really what we want to see in this pool stages. Who are the new teams who are going to emerge as well? You know, the way that Bordeaux did a couple of seasons ago, you know, and showed themselves to have the capability to do what they did last season and lift the trophy. So let's go on to the fixtures in round 1. So first of all, Friday, 5th of December, Pool 1, Round 1. This is an 8 o'clock kickoff at the Corp Ac Stadium, and it is Sale Sharks versus Glasgow Warriors. So, you know, an away trip for Glasgow starting out. You know, given the quality that Glasgow have, you would think that he can go there and get a result, but we've seen Glasgow, you know, completely, you know, screw the pooch on stuff like this before, and just not turn up in away fixtures. So could be an interesting one there between those two. And Sale, if they start with a win, then they'll feel like they definitely have a chance in that pool to qualify. But for me, I'm going for Glasgow to maybe edge that one. Okay, next game then, Pool 3, Friday again, 8 o'clock kickoff, and it's at the Stade Jean Daugard. It's Bayonne versus the Stormers. And again, it's an interesting one. You know, you've got the team that maybe certainly at a neutral venue, who you might think would be the favourite for the fixture, actually is the away team. But I think Stormers, they've shown this year, the start of this year, that they can go away from home. They've gone to Thomond Park and they've got to win. They've got to feel like, they can go to Bayonne and they can do the same. And, given that, I'm going to back Stormers for a win there. And even if they don't win that one, I think, given that they have 2 home fixtures as everybody else does, but I expect Stormers to win their 2 home games in this and to be able to progress. Then we're on to the Saturday games. So we Pool 1 game, 1:00 kickoff at the Stonex Stadium, Saracens versus Clermont Auvergne. This kind of brings you back to the kind of early to like mid 2000s, where Clermont were a force in this competition, and Saracens were winning the competition outright as well. And it's got a bit of a classic written all over. I think this is going to be a back and forth between these 2 teams, but I think Saracens at home take the win there. Next, then Pool 4, 3:15 kickoff at Loftus Versfeld. It's Vodacom Bulls versus defending champions Bordeaux Begles, and for me, this stands out as one of the ties of the round, if not the tie of the round. You've got a very strong South African team who very rarely lose at Loftus versus defending champions who, have just sailed through the pool stages the last couple of years and now facing the prospect of potentially losing their first game. But again, this one could be high scoring classic. I'm going to go for the Bulls though to edge it in the end. I think at home with, there should be a decent home support there for them. And, just all the advantages, the altitude, etc. Probably just enough for the Bulls to edge that one. Next then onto Pool 3. So 5:30 kickoff. This is at the Stade Marcel de Flandre, and it is La Rochelle versus Leicester Tigers. Again, another massive game between 2 teams, former winners of this competition. Both have been in the mix in the quarterfinals over the last few seasons as well. And, a good start for both of these teams, you feel is essential, given that there's no standout, certainly on form, no standout team in this pool, I feel. So a win here for either team could be just a stepping stone to kick them into gear and staying them through, possibly as, pool winners, depending on how the results go. But a massive game again to start for both of these. I'm going to go for home team La Rochelle to win. Next then, same pools, Pool 3, 5:30 kickoff at the same time at Viva Stadium. It's Leinster Rugby versus Harlequins. And, Quins, they've shown in this competition, they play such great rugby. They can win high scoring games, just kind of you score one, we'll score one type, swashbuckling, attitude to that kind of thing. And definitely an out of form Leinster, they could go there and they could get a result. But I think now Leinster, they're going to have all those Irish players coming back into the team. So it's not going to be the same team that kind of struggled, in their last game. But I think those guys will have a point to prove as well, given how, their November ended. And I'm expecting, a performance from Leinster and for Leinster to win that one. On to Pool 4 then, and it is Scarlets versus Bristol Bears at the Parky Scarlets. So 2 of the kind of less favoured teams, I would say, at Champions Cup level. And again, it's one of these ones where you may be a less favoured team, but if you win this game, suddenly, you're in a decent position, and then you can pick up another win and you're probably going to go through the pool. So Scarlet's home advantage, but Bristol are a decent team, and my head is basically edging towards Bristol because I'm a URC fan, I'm going to say Scarlets are going to win that one. On to Pool 2 then. So 8 o'clock kickoff at the Rec. You have Bath versus Munster. Another massive game this weekend. We're really being treated to some brilliant rugby. Another one that really takes your mind back to the past, to the old Heineken Cup era. DC teams used to clash regularly. Bath at the time would have already been previous champions. Munster looking for their first title. Eventually they got themselves two. And then you've obviously got the whole thing of Van Gran and that whole thing of him being a former Munster coach and then going there and getting Bath their first title in the Premiership. And as Premiership champions, Bath should feel confident about progressing through this pool. But it's a big game for them first up. Munster, they've shown this year, other than that game against the Stormers, really, that in adversity they were able to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and get wins in games when they're not necessarily performing. Again, it's another one that's saying head says Bath are going to win that one. But my heart is with Munster on this, and I'm going to go for a Munster win there. Okay, on to the Sunday games then. So Sunday, 7th of December, and we have a 1 o'clock kickoff. Is it at the Stade du Hameau, and it's Pau versus Northampton Saints. And Pau they're one of those teams kind of similar to Scarlets, but I rank them a little bit above Scarlets in terms of just how they performed recently in Europe. But yeah, on that edge between Champions Cup and Challenge Cup, I think, and it's a big step up for them to be facing a team like Northampton Saints, who, again, they were semi-finalists last year, very close to semi-finalists the year before, where they almost beat Leinster at Croke Park. And, so they've got the recent pedigree in this competition. They're former champions as well. And, probably in terms of going away from home, one of the few teams going away from home that a lot of people would peg as the favourites, and I'm going to go for them as well. I think Northampton Saints are going to win that one. Then on to Pool 1, 3:15 kickoff at the Stade Ernest Wallon, and is Kings of Europe, Toulouse versus Hollywoodbets Sharks. So you've basically got, if you look at those teams, you have the team who have been absolutely dominant in Europe over the years. Lots of French internationals in there as well. And then you have the Sharks, full of Springboks, who are just absolutely destroying everyone in their path. When they're wearing the Springbok jersey, put a Sharks jersey on them though, and what the hell happens to them? Because it seems like, it's a reverse kind of thing, where instead of them growing a foot taller, they seem to grow a foot shorter. So I really want the Sharks to start performing in this competition and show like the whole of Europe what they're capable of. Because you saw last year when they took the URC seriously, suddenly they were able to get into, get themselves into a semi-final. But they're going to have to take this competition absolutely seriously. And I worry for them first up, going away to such a strong team as Toulouse. And, this is one, again, my heart is saying I want the Sharks to win, but my head is going to win this one, I think. And I'm going to go for a Toulouse win there. Okay, on to Pool 2 then. We have a 3:15 kickoff. This is Gloucester versus Castres Olympique. And this one at Kingsholm. Again, Gloucester play some beautiful rugby, and they're against a Castres team who, again, you don't know how seriously they're going to take this competition. Whether they're going to really give it a go. Generally, they kind of see how things go in the first couple of rounds, so we may see them send over a fairly strong team for this one. But I still think that Gloucester at home should win that one. Next then, onto Pool 2, 5:30 kickoff at the Hive Stadium, Edinburgh versus Toulon. And, this is a tough one. honestly, you got Edinburgh, who have been up and down. They've been up and down this season as well in the URC. Toulon, who you're a strong team in this competition. And, again, former winners, former champions, be that a while ago. It doesn't matter. I feel like, if you've been champions of this competition, it's in the DNA of your club. And there are certain expectations that come with that as well. Edinburgh, I think, at home, they should definitely feel like they have a chance. But in terms of home advantage for Edinburgh in this competition in the past, or in European competition at least in the past, it hasn't always gone their way. They haven't performed the way that maybe they'd like to. Although I'm wearing a Toulon jersey, I'm going to go for an Edinburgh win, just back, the URC brethren there. And then that then is the last game of round one. So a lot of exciting rugby on there. What I'll be doing over the weekend is I will cover as many of the games as I possibly can. Given that some of them are on at the same time, it means that I'm not going to be able to, cover as many as I would like to, but certainly as many as I get to watch, I'm going to be covering. So probably I would expect over the whole weekend, given that we have Friday games, we have Saturday games and Sunday games, I'm thinking maybe 4 or 5 games over the weekend is what I'm going to cover. And it's going to be, given that I'm Irish and that I'm a URC fan, it's going to be focused on Irish teams, South African teams, Scottish teams, Welsh teams. Unfortunately, we've no Italian teams in the Champions Cup this year. But yeah, those are the games I'm going to be picking out to cover. And for me, it's going to be a hell of a weekend of rugby as well. I think it may have snuck up on us, but I think it's going to land with a bang. I think we're going to have some instant classics performance, games as well that people will be talking about in 10 years' time. At least, fingers crossed, that's what we're hoping for. But let me know what you think down in the comments.